We can understand that there's a lot more to racism than parading around in glory suits and torching churches or closing borders. And we can understand that there's a lot more to misogyny than opening fire on a sorority house or doxing feminists. Then we can understand that there's a lot more to transphobia than dismembering your date and calling that panic. There's more to transphobia than firing your transitioning employee because you believe that Jesus told you to. There's more to transphobia than hurling the T-slur or freak at a stranger walking down the street. Most cis people would never do any of those things, but that doesn't mean they're not transphobic. Just as you can participate in racism without voting Republican and participate in misogyny without being a devout MRA, you can be transphobic without willfully dead-naming people or supporting bathroom bills. Expanding this conversation means delivering some bad news to otherwise open-minded cis people, but it also points out to those same well-meaning yet clueless cis people that they have enormous power to fight transphobia. It isn't just about those of us who are transgender being more assertive, in other words, being more conventionally good-looking, crowd-pleasing, obviously fabulous spokespeople. Just as it is not our job to educate you, it is not our job to justify ourselves to you. The tricky part for cis people is battling the inner transphobe. Everyday transphobia lies hidden within even seemingly quite liberal individuals. I recently shared Elliot Alexander's tale of being accosted by a random man who found them attractive until he realized that Alexander is not a cisgender woman. They confronted his confusion with an understanding of the male gaze and how they use their beauty to remind men to stop treating women or anyone you might even fleetingly perceive as female like objects. One commenter marveled at his rudeness, to which I responded, at least that guy was honest and upfront about what he was thinking. We have to expect a lot of deflection, obfuscation, and outright denial from most cis people, especially when they're freaking out over finding one of us attractive. I continued, attempting to clarify. Most cis people are transphobic. They just don't know it because they have no conscious aversion to us. Scratch the surface, which we do simply by existing, and it starts to show. Indeed, many cis people who aren't overtly conservative believe that they're completely okay with us, but all they do is declare their acceptance of trans people. When it comes to fighting transphobia, cis people are all talk and no action. I guess that's because they don't really care about us, but need to convince themselves and us that they do. As the perception of our supposed trendiness grows, this will get worse. Though if being transgender was really so fashionable, we could all make a living and share our lives with people who love us. In reality, being transgender has so far done nothing but hurt many of us. And this proves that society is profoundly and pervasively transphobic. I've struggled with how honest I should allow myself to be about this, but until cis people confront their own prejudice, our situation cannot improve to any significant degree. Another problem is that they can point to what tiny scraps of remotely positive attention a very few of us are lucky enough to receive, and they mistake that for some incredible sea change that makes things better for all of us. It doesn't. Visibility by itself is not helping us. Visibility without protections, without major legal and economic changes, does nothing but make us bigger targets. Visibility alone will only result in more murder, more homelessness, more unemployment, generally more misery for the majority of trans people who are not celebrities. Visibility as an end unto itself mostly benefits trans people who are already famous and the cis people who are profiting from hashtag trans supposedly being the next big thing. So join me instead in using the tag everyday transphobia, the way everyday sexism exposes the garden variety misogyny that does as much to hold us back and wear us down as any physical attacks and any quantifiable obstacle. Just as racism didn't evaporate in the wake of the Civil Rights Act, the passage of a major transgender rights bill, which isn't even on the horizon yet, won't make transphobia go away. This culture that devalues us must change. A culture that sees the only viable alternative to murdering us as ignoring us to death. This isn't love winning. This is cissexism winning. What about queer people who can't afford or don't want to get married? What about those of us who cannot even get fellow queer people, much less a fundamentally conservative establishment, to respect our identities and lives? Affluent, cisgender white men have kept the mainstream focus of queer issues on themselves and exclusively those goals that most benefit them. I've seen assumptions that the Supreme Court decision of 26th of June last year means that we can finally work on other stuff now. But don't hold your breath. There will always be excuses to throw trans people under the bus. It's just not practical yet. It's just not the right time. Slow down, have some patience. These things take a while. As self-styled allies wait for a strategically convenient moment, still more trans people are dying. The cis population is holding our lives hostage, and this miserable situation will never end unless they choose to root out their own casual transphobia. It's 1,000 relatively mundane, relatively little things that you do to us that say, you're ugly, you're selfish, you're boring, you're crazy, you're unlovable, you're a joke, and you're not fully a human being. So as long as we are your punchlines and your romantic rejects, you are transphobic. Deal with that, please.